All right, let's dive in. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going way back to 2011,
Okay.
back when, Amazon was like just really starting to take off.
Yeah.
We think of them now as the everything store, but what was going on back then? And to find out, we're going deep into Jeff Bezos's 2011 letter to shareholders.
Right.
Plus, we've got some analyst commentary from back then too.
That's always fun.
Yeah, should be interesting to see what they were saying.
It's really fascinating actually because you can see the seeds of Amazon's success even way back then.
Oh yeah,
Like how they were already laser focused on the customer
right.
and really willing to play the long game,
Mm.
which is not always the norm.
Yeah, that's not typical Wall Street thinking.
No, not at all.
So speaking of customer focus, Bezos uses this phrase, customer obsession.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just throw it around. He actually gives some really interesting examples from the early days of Amazon. Remember dial-up internet,
Oh, I try to forget.
the worldwide wait, as they called it.
Well-
But even back then, Bezos was obsessed with making that customer experience on their website as smooth as possible.
Right.
I mean, it seems so obvious now.
Well, yeah, but back then it was pretty revolutionary.
It really was. Like, they were ahead of their time in a lot of ways.
Totally.
And, let's not forget their drive to just lower prices constantly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like today, we're used to seeing deals and discounts everywhere.
Right.
But back then, that was a radical idea.
Yeah, definitely.
So they were willing to sacrifice those short-term profits to really gain market share and build that customer loyalty.
Yeah, they were playing the long game.
Exactly. Instead of making their balance sheets look amazing right away,
Yeah.
they were investing in making their customers happy.
Mm.
Which brings me to one of my favorite lines from the letter.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to quote this directly.
Okay.
Bezos writes, "When forced to choose between optimizing the appearance of our GAAP accounting and maximizing the present value of future cash flows, we'll take the cash flows." I mean, talk about a bold statement.
That is bold. And, for those who maybe aren't familiar, GAAP stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, which is basically just the standard way companies report their financials.
Right.
So what he's saying is he's more interested in the long-term value of the business than making the numbers look good in the short term.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right.
Yeah.
It really shows how much they were willing to just, diverge from the typical Wall Street thinking.
Sure.
Most public companies are obsessed with those quarterly earnings.
Mm-hmm.
But Amazon was playing a different game.
Yeah, they were building for the future.
Exactly.
And this approach allowed them to invest heavily in things like, well, for one, building out this massive fulfillment center network
Right?
and also developing new platforms like AWS.
Now, hold on. For those of us who aren't like check wizards, what exactly is AWS?
So AWS stands for Amazon Web Services, and it's
Right.
essentially a cloud computing platform.
So think of it like renting out computing power and storage over the internet.
Okay?
Before AWS, if you wanted to run a website
Wow.
or like an application, you had to buy and maintain all your own servers,
Oh, wow.
which was expensive and complicated.
Yeah.
AWS made it possible for, well, anyone really, to access all these powerful computing resources whenever they needed it,
Okay.
without the headache of managing their own, physical infrastructure.
I see.
So it was a game changer, especially for, startups and smaller businesses.
So they were making these huge bets
Yeah.
on things like AWS, even when they weren't sure how it would pan out.
Right, but that's where that long-term vision comes in. They saw the potential of
But-
cloud computing, even when it was just starting out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about the technology itself. It was about empowering others.
Oh.
Bezos talks a lot about creating these self-service platforms like
Yeah.
AWS that would allow thousands of people to experiment and achieve things that just wouldn't have been possible before.
That's pretty incredible.
It is.
And you know what else blew my mind?
What's that?
The stories about, everyday entrepreneurs
Oh, yeah.
using these platforms to build successful businesses. Like, you've got Bob Frank, who lost his job and started selling used books on Amazon.
Oh.
And then there's Kelly Lester, a mom, who created this whole, lunchbox empire through their fulfillment program.
It's amazing how they've created this whole ecosystem of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
It benefits the individual sellers, of course,
Right.
but it also gives customers all this variety and choice.
Right. It's like this win-win ecosystem where everyone thrives.
Exactly.
Which actually, that kind of brings us to another game changer.
What's that?
the Kindle revolution.
Ah, yes.
Now, remember back in 2011, e-readers were pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were skeptical,
Oh,
and I was like, who would want to read a book on a screen?
right.
But Amazon, with their long-term thinking, they saw the potential.
They really did.
And they didn't just create the device. They built this whole ecosystem around it.
Right, with the Kindle store, Kindle Direct Publishing,
Yes.
all of that.
And Kindle Direct Publishing, or KDP, was particularly disruptive.
Oh, yeah.
It allowed authors to kind of bypass those traditional publishers
Mm.
and reach readers directly.
Yeah, cutting at the middleman.
And the terms for authors were amazing.
Right.
They got to keep their copyrights, derivative rights. They could publish on their own schedule and earn a 70% royalty rate
Wow.
compared to the measly 17.5% offered by traditional publishers.
Huge difference.
So it's no wonder authors were just flocking to KDP.
Yeah, makes total sense.
And we see this in the letter. Like, we've got A.K. Alexander, an author who was just struggling to make ends meet with traditional publishing.
Right.
She joins KDP, and suddenly she's earning more in a month than she used to in a year.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. And same thing with Blake Crouch. He quit his day job and became a full-time author thanks to KDP.
Wow.
It's so inspiring to see how they just empowered authors and really disrupted this whole publishing industry, giving readers lower prices and way more choice in books.
It really highlights how Amazon's commitment to innovation wasn't just about technology or logistics.
Right.
They were willing to rethink, to upend entire industries,
Yeah.
from book publishing to web services.
But even with all these successes, you had Wall Street analysts just scratching their heads
Oh, yeah.
at some of these moves. They were like, why are you investing so much in these new platforms? Where are the profits?
Classic Wall Street
Right.
short-term thinking.
Seemed like they didn't get Amazon's long-term vision.
It's like they were missing the forest for the trees.
Exactly.
They were so focused on those quarterly profits that they missed the bigger picture.
Right.
Amazon was building a foundation for sustainable growth, even if it meant delaying gratification in the short term.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that play out. And speaking of building a foundation, Amazon's company culture also played a huge role in their success. Bezos put a really high value on hiring versatile and talented employees. And he preferred offering stock options over cash compensation.
Interesting.
So that created this culture of ownership where employees were incentivized to think long-term
Yeah,
and act like owners of the business.
that's smart.
And let's be real, Amazon's work environment was known to be pretty intense.
I've heard stories.
Bezos even says in the letter, you can work long, hard, or smart, but you can't pick just 2 out of 3.
Oh, wow.
Right. That's not exactly a recipe for work-life balance.
Not really, no.
But it was this demanding, results-oriented culture that fueled their relentless innovation and allowed them to achieve such ambitious goals.
True. They were willing to push boundaries and experiment, even if it meant failing along the way.
Yeah, so it seems like Amazon's success in 2011 was this combination of factors. The customer obsession, the long-term vision,
Yeah.
willingness to empower others, and their intense company culture.
You've hit the nail on the head. It was this unique blend of principles and practices that really set them apart from the competition.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how they were able to kind of juggle this relentless innovation with that focus on long-term profitability.
Right.
I can only imagine what Wall Street must have been thinking
Oh, I'm sure.
as they were pouring all this money into these, new ventures.
Yeah.
Were they getting any pushback from investors who, expected those quicker returns?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was definitely tension between Amazon's long-term vision and those short-term expectations.
Right.
Wall Street wants to see those profits.
Right.
Now.
Yeah, quarter after quarter.
But Amazon was playing a different game.
Well, and remember that line from Bezos we talked about?
Yeah, about the cash flows.
When forced to choose between optimizing the appearance of our GAAP accounting and maximizing the present value of future cash flows, we'll take the cash flows.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Right.
It takes guts to stand up to Wall Street like that.
It really does.
But, their stock price over the years has definitely proven them right.
It certainly has.
It wasn't just about ignoring Wall Street, though.
Okay.
They were very strategic about their investments. They weren't just chasing every new shiny trend. They focused on building platforms
Yeah.
that would create value for both their customers and those third-party sellers.
Right.
Think about AWS and Kindle Direct Publishing. Those weren't just products.
Okay.
They were entire ecosystems
hmm
designed to benefit everyone involved.
So you're right. They kind of created these win-win situations where everyone could benefit.
Exactly. Customers got those lower prices, more selection,
Mhm.
sellers reached a wider audience, and of course, Amazon took their cut of each transaction.
It's a pretty good model.
It is. It's a classic example of what economists call network effects.
Okay, what are network effects?
Basically, the more participants you have on a platform, the more valuable it becomes for everyone.
Oh, okay, so it's like this. Virtuous cycle.
Exactly, a virtuous cycle that Amazon leveraged masterfully.
So let's go back to AWS for a moment.
Sure.
You explained what cloud computing is, but can you tell us a bit more about why it was so revolutionary back in 2011?
Well, you see, before AWS, if you wanted to run a website or like an application, you pretty much had to buy and maintain your own physical servers,
Wow.
which meant, investing in all this expensive hardware, finding a place to house it, hiring people to manage it.
Yeah.
It was a huge undertaking.
Yeah, especially for startups and small businesses.
Right, exactly. But AWS changed all that. It gave businesses access to, virtually unlimited computing power and storage, all delivered over the internet.
Mm.
And the best part was you only paid for what you used.
Wow.
It was like going from owning a car to using a ride-sharing service.
Well, yeah,
You had all the benefits of having that car without the hassle and expense
I see.
of actually owning one.
It's pretty amazing how they were able to kind of foresee the potential of cloud computing
Yeah.
when most people didn't even, know what it was.
Right. And they weren't just thinking about those big businesses either.
Okay.
Remember those stories from the letter about those individual entrepreneurs
Right.
using AWS to launch their dreams?
Mm-hmm.
It really democratized access to these powerful technologies.
So anyone with, a good idea
Yeah.
and an internet connection could just get their business off the ground.
Yeah, exactly. It was like leveling the playing field for entrepreneurship.
I love that. It
Yeah.
wasn't just about, making money for Amazon. It was about empowering others to achieve their goals.
And that in turn led to more innovation and competition,
Right.
which ultimately benefited the customer.
It's that win-win-win.
It is. It is.
So we've talked a lot about customer obsession,
Mm-hmm.
long-term thinking, the power of platforms.
Mhm.
But what about Amazon's internal culture?
Ah.
How did that contribute to their success?
Well, Amazon's culture is legendary, both for its intensity and its results-oriented focus.
Right.
Bezos talks about hiring versatile and talented employees
Mm-hmm.
and creating a work environment where everyone is expected to think like an owner.
Hmm.
He believed in empowering employees to take ownership of their work, to think big, and
Sure.
he wasn't shy about offering those stock options as a way to align employee incentives with the long-term success of the company.
But let's be honest, that kind of culture
Yeah.
can be pretty demanding.
Oh, for sure.
We talked earlier about Bezos' statement about working long, hard, or smart,
Yeah.
but not being able to choose just 2 out of 3.
Right, that doesn't exactly scream work-life balance.
No, not really.
But it was this intense results-oriented culture that allowed them to move so quickly and achieve those really ambitious goals.
Yeah, they were willing to experiment, to
Yeah.
take risks,
Mm-hmm.
and even to fail,
Mm-hmm.
as long as they were learning
Yeah.
and iterating along the way.
It seems like they embraced the idea that failure is just part of that process of innovation.
Absolutely.
They knew that if you're not willing to take risks and push those boundaries, you're never going to achieve anything truly groundbreaking.
So looking back at Amazon in 2011,
Yeah,
it's clear they were doing a lot of things right.
they were.
But I'm curious, were there any areas where they might have, missed the mark,
That's a great question.
or things they could have done differently looking back?
And it's important to look at the full picture here. One area that's received some criticism is, their treatment of workers.
Okay.
While Bezos emphasized hiring those talented people and rewarding them,
Right.
with the stock options, there have also been reports of, demanding working conditions and high employee turnover, which raises questions about, whether that focus on growth and efficiency came at the expense of employee well-being.
That's a good point. Building a successful business shouldn't come at the cost of your employees' health and happiness.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely not.
You got to find that balance.
Finding that balance is crucial.
And as we, continue to analyze Amazon's journey, it's important to consider both the successes and the challenges,
You got it.
and to learn from both.
Absolutely.
Well said. So where do we go from here? What other insights can we glean from this 2011 shareholder letter?
Well, there's still a lot to unpack. In the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to explore how Amazon's approach to competition and innovation really set them apart.
Okay.
We'll also examine how their strategy evolved over time and what lessons we can draw from their journey.
All right. Well, I'm ready to dive in. I can't wait to uncover more nuggets of wisdom from the Bezos playbook.
It's a good playbook.
It is a good playbook. Until next time, fellow deep divers. Welcome back to the deep dive. It's amazing how much insight we've gotten from just one letter, written over a decade ago.
I know, right?
It really shows you the power of having that clear vision and sticking to your principles, even when others might doubt you.
It's a testament to long-term thinking and just being bold, even when things are uncertain.
Speaking of being bold,
Yeah.
I'd love to dig into how Amazon approached competition back in 2011.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they were up against some serious heavy hitters at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the landscape back then. You had Apple dominating, consumer electronics with the iPod and the iPhone. Google was rapidly expanding, their search engine and their advertising empire.
Yeah.
And let's not forget Walmart, who was still like the king of retail.
So how did Amazon even hold their own against these giants? What was their secret weapon?
Well, I don't think there was one secret weapon.
Okay.
It was more like a combination of factors. First and foremost, you have that relentless customer focus we've been talking about.
It's more than just offering low prices or a wide selection.
Right. It's about really understanding what customers value and then innovating to deliver it.
It's like they were obsessed with making the customer's life easier.
Yes.
Even in ways that customers didn't even know they needed.
Exactly.
And then the second key factor, I think, was their willingness to experiment and take risks.
Yeah, they weren't afraid to try new things.
Like pouring resources into AWS and KDP.
Exactly.
Even though they weren't profitable at first.
They saw that long-term potential, even when others didn't.
Right. And that brings us to that third key ingredient, that long-term vision.
Yes, they weren't playing that quarterly earnings game. They were building for the future.
Even if it meant sacrificing those short-term profits.
Right.
It's like they were thinking 10 steps ahead while everyone else was focused on the next move.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. They were playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
Okay, so they had that customer-centric approach. They weren't afraid to take risks, and they were playing the long game. But what about innovation? How did they manage to disrupt so many industries?
Well, their approach to innovation was really remarkable.
Okay.
They had this incredible ability to identify opportunities where technology could be used to create a better experience for the customer, and then they would execute on those opportunities with incredible speed and agility.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Think about the Kindle. Back in 2011, e-readers were still a pretty niche product.
Right.
But Bezos saw the potential to revolutionize how people read.
And they didn't just create an e-reader. They built that whole ecosystem around it.
Right. With the Kindle store, KDP, and all the supporting infrastructure.
And they did it again with AWS.
Yep.
As we've talked about.
They saw that potential of cloud computing before most people even understood what it was.
It's really a testament to their vision.
It is.
Their technical prowess. And just their willingness to challenge the status quo.
For sure.
So if we were to try to distill Amazon's approach to innovation into a few key principles, what would they be?
I would say it boils down to this. Start with the customer.
Okay.
What are their needs? How can you solve their problems in a way that no one else is doing?
Be willing to experiment and take risks.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to.
Yeah.
Try new things, even if they seem crazy at first.
And remember to think long term. Don't get caught up in that short-term noise.
Right.
Focus on building something that will create lasting value.
And never stop learning.
Right.
Be curious, be adaptable, and always be looking for ways to improve.
Those are powerful principles, and they're just as relevant today as they were back then.
So as we wrap up our deep dive
into
Amazon's 2011 shareholder letter, what's the one big takeaway you hope listeners will walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that success isn't just about having a great idea or being in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
It's about having that clear vision, a relentless focus on the customer, a willingness to take risks, and a culture that supports innovation. Those are the ingredients that allowed Amazon to transform from, an online bookstore to the global powerhouse they are today.
It's an incredible journey.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of Jeff Bezos and the early days of Amazon. We hope you enjoyed this trip back in time and maybe even gleaned some inspiration for your own ventures. Until next time, happy diving.